The massive Imperial survey fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Their sleek, silver ships stretched for kilometers, casting long shadows across the starlit void. Admiral Ross of the Imperial Expansion Force stood on his command bridge, a satisfied smile on his face as he looked at the blue-green planet in the distance. "Another primitive world for the Empire," he said to his crew. "Scan for their technology level." But before his crew could complete their scans, a strange shimmer appeared in space around them. At first, it looked like a heat wave, barely visible against the stars. Then it solidified into a translucent barrier, completely surrounding the Imperial fleet. "Sir," his sensor officer shouted, "we're detecting energy readings off the scale. The barrier, it's some kind of technology we've never seen before." Admiral Ross's smile vanished. This wasn't supposed to happen. Earth was listed as a pre-space civilization in their databases. But before he could give any orders, space itself seemed to tear open in front of his fleet. Through these tears came ships, Earth ships. They were smaller than the Imperial vessels, but sleeker, with smooth lines that seemed to bend light around them. Their hulls were painted deep ocean blue with the letters EDF, Earth Defense Fleet, written in bold white. The Imperial crew watched in stunned silence as the Earth ships took up perfect formation around them. Their barrier had trapped the Imperial fleet like insects in amber, unable to escape or use their weapons. A communication request pinged on their main screen. Admiral Ross nodded to accept it, and the face that appeared made him step back in surprise. The man wore a crisp blue uniform with 4 stars on each shoulder, but he looked completely human. "This is Admiral James Carter of the Earth Defense Fleet," the man said calmly. "You have entered restricted space. The Sol system is off-limits to the Galactic Empire by order of the Earth United Defense Council." Admiral Ross tried to hide his shock. "This is impossible," he said. "Our records show Earth as a primitive." "Your records," Admiral Carter interrupted, "are exactly what we wanted you to see. We've been watching the Empire for decades, learning your technologies, improving upon them, and preparing for this day." To demonstrate his point, Admiral Carter pressed a button off-screen. Instantly, every system on the Imperial ships except life support and communications went dark. The mighty Imperial fleet floated helpless in space. "This is your only warning," Carter continued. "Earth is not some helpless world for you to conquer and strip of resources. We know what you've done to other civilizations. We've seen how you enslave populations and destroy cultures. It stops here." Admiral Ross found his voice again. "The Empire will not stand for this. We have millions of ships, thousands of worlds. And yet here you are, powerless, in front of just one of our defense fleets." Carter's voice remained calm but carried steel in it. "We're going to release you now. Return to your empire. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that Earth is not to be trifled with." The barrier began to fade, and power returned to the Imperial ships. Admiral Ross's crew immediately began plotting a retreat course, but Carter had one final message. "Oh, and Admiral, those weapon systems you're powering up. I wouldn't. The barrier may be gone, but we have other surprises. Leave. Now." This is the only warning the Empire gets. As the Imperial fleet fled back into faster-than-light travel, Admiral Carter turned to his command crew. "Send word to all stations," he ordered. "Phase 1 is complete. The Empire now knows we exist. Begin Phase 2. On his primary screen, he watched the Imperial ships vanish into the distance. Humanity had hidden and prepared for over 50 years, developing technologies the Empire couldn't imagine. Now the real work would begin, showing the galaxy that humanity wouldn't just resist the Empire, but change it forever. The warning shot had been fired. The game of cat and mouse was about to begin, but in this game, Earth was no mouse. The Empire just didn't know it yet. 3 days after the incident at the edge of the Sol system, Earth's United Defense Council gathered in their underground chamber beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was circular, with walls made of smooth black stone that seemed to absorb light. 12 council members sat around a gleaming table, their faces lit by soft blue lights from above. Director Anna Thompson stood at the head of the table, her gray hair pulled back tightly, her expression serious. "The Empire has responded exactly as we predicted," she said, touching a control panel. A hologram appeared above the table, showing a single ship approaching Earth's outer defense perimeter. "Their diplomatic vessel carries Ambassador Marcus Reed," she continued. "Our intelligence suggests he was born on Earth over 300 years ago, before leaving to join the Empire. They think sending one of our own will give them an advantage." Admiral Carter, fresh from his encounter with the Imperial fleet, leaned forward. "Can we trust someone who betrayed Earth so long ago?" "We don't need to trust him," Director Thompson replied with a slight smile. "We just need to deliver our message." The diplomatic ship was allowed through Earth's defenses, but only after its weapons and communication systems were completely disabled by Earth's technology. It landed at the new Geneva spaceport, a massive structure of glass and steel that had been hidden underground until recently. Ambassador Reed stepped out of his ship, looking exactly like a man in his mid-30s despite his centuries of age. He wore the Empire's traditional diplomatic robes, flowing purple fabric with gold trim, and carried himself with practiced grace. But his confident expression faltered when he saw the welcome party. Along the walkway stood representatives from 20 different alien species, all refugees from worlds the Empire had conquered. Each wore their native clothing and stood proudly beside Earth military officers. It was a clear message. Earth knew exactly what the Empire did to conquered worlds. Director Thompson met him at the end of the walkway. "Welcome home, Ambassador Reed," she said pleasantly. "I trust the Empire's life extension treatments have served you well." Reed's face tightened slightly. "Director Thompson, I come with a message from—" "Before you deliver that message," Thompson interrupted, "let me show you something." She led him to a large viewing room. The walls lit up with videos and images, Imperial ships stripping resources from helpless worlds, populations being relocated to work camps, ancient cities being demolished for Imperial construction. Alongside each image was a date and location. "We've been watching," Thompson said quietly. "For 50 years, we've had stealth ships documenting everything the Empire does, every atrocity, every broken promise, every civilization destroyed." Reed's diplomatic mask cracked slightly. "The Empire brings order and progress. The Empire brings slavery and destruction," Thompson corrected. "And now you're probably here to offer us a chance to join peacefully before things get difficult. But let me be very clear. Earth will never join the Empire. In fact, we're going to change the Empire itself." She touched another control, and new images appeared. These showed Earth's hidden cities beneath the oceans, colonies on Mars and Venus that had been shielded from Imperial scans, and massive shipyards in the asteroid belt. "This is just the beginning," Thompson said. "We've spent 50 years preparing not just to resist you, but to free every world the Empire has enslaved. You have two choices: leave us alone or face the consequences." Reed's voice was less steady now. "The Empire has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. You cannot hope to." "Times change," Thompson said. "Your Empire began somewhere. Maybe it's time for it to end somewhere too, or at least to change into something better." She turned to face him fully. "Take this message back. Earth is not just refusing to join your Empire. We are banning you from our space entirely. Any Imperial ship entering the Sol system will be disabled and turned back. Any attempt at military action will be met with force. And if the Empire won't accept these terms—" She let the threat hang in the air. Reed looked around the room one last time, at the faces of the refugees who watched him with quiet determination. He had served the Empire for centuries, but for the first time in his long life, he felt something he hadn't expected: doubt. As he walked back to his ship, Reed realized that Earth wasn't negotiating from a position of weakness. They were giving the Empire a chance to back down gracefully, before they showed just how powerful they had truly become. In the heart of the Imperial Palace on the capital world of Nova Prime, alarms were blaring. The Empire's top military commanders rushed into the golden-domed war room, their faces pale with shock. On the massive screen before them, red dots were appearing across the galaxy map. Dozens of them, then hundreds. "What are we looking at?" demanded High Commander Peters, his imperial medals clinking as he moved. A young officer swallowed hard before answering. "Sir, we're detecting defensive systems activating on multiple worlds. Systems we never knew existed. They're Earth technology." Meanwhile, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean on Earth, Dr. Robert Mason stood in his laboratory, watching the same data with satisfaction. The lab was a marvel of engineering, with quantum computers lining the walls and a holographic display showing the status of every defense system Earth had secretly planted across the galaxy. "Status report," he said to his team. "All systems are online, Doctor," replied his assistant. "The quantum shields are activating exactly as planned. 342 worlds now have active defenses against Imperial forces." Dr. Mason nodded, his weathered face reflecting in the blue light of the displays. For 20 years, he had led the team that developed these revolutionary defense systems. They were smaller than Imperial technology, yet far more powerful, using principles of quantum mechanics that the Empire's scientists hadn't even discovered yet. "Sir," one of the technicians called out, "we're detecting Imperial probe ships near the Orion Defense Network." Dr. Mason smiled. "Let them look. It's time they learned just how far behind they really are." In deep space, an Imperial science vessel approached one of Earth's hidden defense platforms. The platform looked simple, just a small dark cylinder floating in space. The Imperial scientists tried every scanning method they knew, but they couldn't understand how it worked. Captain Jones of the Imperial Science Division frowned at his readings. "These devices shouldn't be possible," he muttered. "They're violating half the laws of physics as we know them." Suddenly, his ship's engine shut down. A soft blue field surrounded them, and a message appeared on their screens in clear Imperial text. "Protected world. Imperial presence not welcome. Please retreat." Back on Earth, Admiral Carter met with Dr. Mason in the command center. The room was filled with screens showing Imperial ships discovering Earth's defense networks across the galaxy. "How many worlds did we protect?" Carter asked. "Every world that showed signs of resisting Imperial control," Mason replied. "We looked for the brave ones, the ones who tried to fight back but didn't have the technology. Now they do." He pressed a button, and a new image appeared, a live feed from a world called New Hope, where Imperial forces had been trying to crush a rebellion for years. The rebels were now standing proudly as Earth's defense systems protected their cities from Imperial bombardment. "The best part," Mason continued, "these aren't just shields. Every system we installed contains complete records of Imperial atrocities, proof of their lies, and evidence of their true plans for conquered worlds. We're not just protecting these planets, we're showing them the truth." Admiral Carter watched as more reports came in. Imperial ships were being turned away from dozens of worlds. Rebellion leaders were downloading Earth's data, spreading the truth about the Empire's actions. The carefully maintained lies of Imperial propaganda were crumbling. "What about their attempts to disable the systems?" Carter asked. Mason chuckled. "They can try. But these devices operate on quantum principles the Empire doesn't understand. They can't disable what they can't comprehend. And every time they try." He gestured to another screen, where an Imperial engineering team's attempts to shut down a defense platform had resulted in their own systems being temporarily disabled. "They learn a little more about how outmatched they really are," Mason finished. In the Imperial Palace, High Commander Peters stared at the galaxy map in growing horror. More red dots were appearing every hour. Earth hadn't just prepared to defend itself. It had spent decades setting up a galaxy-wide network of resistance, And now that network was activating, piece by piece, systematically dismantling the Empire's control of its conquered worlds. "Get me the Imperial Council," he ordered. "They need to know. This isn't just about Earth anymore. The galaxy itself is slipping from our grasp." Grand Admiral Victor Drake stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Eternal Glory, watching as his battle fleet of 500 ships moved into position around the Sol system. His plan was simple: attack from multiple angles, overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numbers, and prove that the Empire could not be defied. "All ships report ready, sir," his second-in-command reported. "We've identified what appears to be a weak point in their defensive barrier near Jupiter." Drake smiled coldly. "Begin the attack. Show these upstart humans what real power looks like." The Imperial fleet surged forward, their massive ships gleaming in the starlight. But on Earth, in the Strategic Command Center, Admiral Carter watched the approaching fleet with calm interest. "They're falling for it," he said to his officers. "Just as planned. Activate Defense Pattern Delta." As the Imperial ships approached the supposed weak point, they suddenly found themselves facing something unexpected. The space around them began to ripple, and brilliant points of light appeared everywhere, hundreds of them, then thousands. "Sir," an Imperial officer shouted, "those lights, they're quantum mirrors. Our sensors are being reflected and multiplied. We can't tell what's real and what isn't." Drake's smile vanished as he realized his mistake. His fleet was now surrounded by what appeared to be millions of defensive platforms, each one a possible threat. He had no way to know which were real and which were reflections. "Launch fighters," he ordered. "Fire on everything." But as Imperial weapons blazed across space, something even stranger happened. Their energy beams passed right through most of the targets, while others absorbed the attacks completely without damage. And then, quietly and efficiently, Earth's real defense platforms went to work. One by one, Imperial ships found their weapons systems shutting down, then their engines, then their shields. No explosions, no destruction, just complete and total disable. "What's happening?" Drake demanded as systems across his flagship began to fail. On the main screen, Admiral Carter's face appeared. "We're demonstrating the difference between power and wisdom. Admiral Drake, your weapons are now disabled. Your engines are offline. But your life support and basic functions remain untouched." Drake's face reddened with rage. "You dare?" "We dare to show mercy," Carter interrupted. "We could destroy your ships. Instead, we're simply stopping you from fighting. No one needs to die today." Across the battlefield, Imperial crews watched in amazement as their mighty ships were systematically reduced to floating hulks. Not a single shot had been fired by Earth's forces. Not a single life had been lost. In Earth's command center, Director Thompson joined Admiral Carter at the main console. "The quantum disabler's worked perfectly," she said. "Dr. Mason's devices shut down their systems without harming their crews." Carter nodded. "Send in the rescue ships. Let's show them how Earth treats defeated enemies." To the further shock of the Imperial forces, Earth's ships began approaching, not with weapons ready, but with offers of aid. They provided food, water, and emergency power to the disabled Imperial vessels. Medical teams were dispatched to help anyone who needed attention during the system's failure. Back on his flagship, Drake watched helplessly as his mighty fleet was reduced to accepting charity from their enemies. But what struck him most was the behavior of Earth's forces, professional, courteous, and completely unthreatening despite their total victory. "Why?" he finally asked Carter, who was still on his screen. "Why not just destroy us?" "Because that's the difference between us and the Empire," Carter replied. "You believe power comes from the ability to destroy. We believe it comes from the choice not to. Remember that when you report back to your leaders." As Earth's rescue ships helped restore basic power to the Imperial vessels, the message was clear throughout the galaxy. Earth wasn't just technologically superior. They were fighting a different kind of war entirely. one where victory didn't require destruction, and where mercy was a show of strength, not weakness. In the imperial palace, when they received news of the battle, the ruling council fell into stunned silence. Their greatest battle fleet had been defeated without a single shot fired. And worse, they had been shown mercy. It was a humiliation that would shake the Empire to its core. Captain Lisa Wells sat in a small cafe on the imperial world of New Terra, sipping something that pretended to be coffee. She looked like any other imperial citizen in her plain gray clothes, but her eyes constantly scanned the room. Around her neck hung a simple pendant that was actually a quantum communicator, connecting her to Earth's intelligence network. A tall man in worker's clothes sat down across from her without asking. "The sun is bright on Earth," he said quietly. "But the stars are brighter in freedom," Lisa replied, completing the code phrase. She smiled. "Welcome to the revolution, Governor Phillips." The man, until yesterday the imperial governor of 3 star systems, looked nervously around the cafe. "Are you sure this place is safe?" "Safer than your palace," Lisa said. "Earth's quantum scramblers prevent any imperial surveillance within 50 meters of us. Now tell me about the military bases in your sector." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on hundreds of worlds. Earth's covert operatives had spent decades building a network of allies, and now that network was activating. Imperial officials, military officers, and common citizens who had witnessed Empire's cruelty were turning against their masters. In Earth's underground command center, a massive holographic display showed the spread of rebellion across Imperial space. Director Thompson watched as another sector lit up green, indicating successful resistance activity. "Captain Wells reports another 3 governors have joined our cause," an analyst reported. "And the quantum data packages have been successfully planted in 17 more Imperial information networks." Thompson nodded. These data packages contained irrefutable evidence of Imperial atrocities, recordings, documents, and testimonies that the Empire had tried to hide. Once released, they would spread faster than Imperial sensors could contain them. On the Imperial capital world, riots had broken out in 3 major cities. The people were demanding answers about the Empire's defeats at Earth's hands. Centuries of carefully maintained propaganda were crumbling as the truth spread through quantum channels that Imperial tech couldn't block. Back on New Terra, Lisa met with her next contact in an abandoned warehouse. The building looked rundown from outside, but inside it housed one of Earth's secret resistance training centers. 24 beings from different species stood in formation, learning to use Earth's advanced technology. "Remember," Lisa told them, "our goal isn't destruction. Earth's way is different from the Empire's. We disable, we protect, we reveal the truth. Let them be the ones who resort to violence." One of the trainees, a former Imperial security officer, raised his hand. "But how can we win without fighting?" Lisa smiled and held up a small device. "This quantum disruptor can shut down any Imperial system within range. Their ships, their weapons, their communications, all useless. We don't need to fight them. We just need to show everyone who they really are." In orbit above New Terra, an Imperial patrol detected unusual energy readings from the warehouse district. But before they could investigate, their systems suddenly failed. By the time they restored power, there was nothing to find. The Empire was learning a hard lesson. You can't fight an enemy that doesn't need to fight back. Earth's technology made Imperial weapons useless. Earth's truth made Imperial lies transparent. And Earth's mercy made Imperial cruelty look even worse. On a dozen worlds, Imperial citizens watched smuggled recordings of the battle at Sol, where Earth's forces had disabled a massive Imperial fleet without killing anyone. They saw Earth's ships providing aid to their defeated enemies. They began to ask questions their leaders couldn't answer. In her private quarters that night, Lisa sent her daily report to Earth. "Revolution spreading faster than expected," she wrote. "Imperial citizens joining our cause in record numbers. They're not just losing control of their empire, they're losing the loyalty of their people." The next morning, Imperial propaganda networks tried to broadcast their usual messages of imperial strength and glory. Instead, on thousands of screens across hundreds of worlds, the truth began to play. The Empire wasn't just fighting Earth anymore. They were fighting their own lies, exposed at last to the light of day. And in the Imperial Palace, the ruling council received a message that chilled them to their core. Phase 5 complete. The Imperial Council chamber was in chaos. 12 High Lords of the Empire shouted at each other across the golden table, their faces red with anger. Above them, the crystal dome showed the stars, including several Imperial ships hanging dead in space, disabled by Earth's technology. "We must strike with everything we have," High Lord Marcus bellowed, pounding his fist on the table. "Gather every ship, every soldier, and watch them all get disabled like toys." High Lord Julia interrupted. "Earth's technology makes our weapons useless. We need to negotiate." "Negotiate?" Another counselor spat. "With primitives who dare to challenge." The argument stopped as the massive doors swung open. Earth's ambassador, Thomas Reed, walked calmly into the chamber. He wore a simple blue uniform with Earth's new symbol, a planet with broken chains around it. "Gentlemen, my lady," he said quietly, but his voice carried to every corner of the room. "I believe it's time we had a real discussion about the future." High Lord Marcus stood up, his face purple with rage. "How dare you interrupt a council meeting? Guards!" But when the Imperial Guard stepped forward, their weapons suddenly crumbled to dust in their hands. Reed smiled slightly. "Quantum decomposition," he explained. "Just one of many technologies we've developed while you thought we were simple primitives. But I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to save you from yourselves." He pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. A hologram appeared, showing thousands of Imperial ships throughout the galaxy. "In exactly 1 hour," Reed continued, "Earth will demonstrate its full capabilities. I suggest you watch carefully." Across Imperial space, on exactly 10,000 worlds, the same scene played out at the same moment. Imperial ships suddenly found themselves unable to move. Space stations lost power. Communication networks went silent. The entire Imperial transportation network, the very thing that held their empire together, simply stopped working. In the council chamber, the High Lords watched in horror as reports flooded in. Their mighty empire, built on faster-than-light travel and instant communications, had been reduced to isolated worlds in the blink of an eye. "This is only a temporary demonstration," Reed said calmly. "In exactly 10 minutes, everything will return to normal. But remember, we can do this at any time, for as long as we want." High Lord Julia leaned forward. "What are your demands?" "Demands?" Reed smiled. "No, my lady. Earth doesn't make demands. We make offers. An offer to help transform the Empire into something better. Something that doesn't need to crush worlds to rule them." He touched the device again, and new images appeared. Pictures of prosperous worlds where Imperial citizens and former slaves work together, protected by Earth's technology. "Your empire is already changing," Reed continued. "Hundreds of your governors and military officers have joined us. Millions of your citizens have seen the truth about Imperial rule. You can either be part of that change or be remembered as the ones who fought against it." The chamber was silent now. The High Lords looked at each other, then at their disabled ships hanging in space above them. "You have 1 day to decide," Reed said, standing up. "Earth's way. Prosperity, freedom, and true progress for all beings. Or," he gestured at the frozen Imperial ships, "well, running an empire becomes rather difficult when none of your ships can move, doesn't it?" As Reed walked out, High Lord Julia turned to her fellow counselors. "We all know what's happening on our worlds. The riots, the defections, the spreading truth about our rule. Perhaps it's time to consider actual change." In Earth's command center, Director Thompson watched the broadcast from the council chamber with satisfaction. "Send word to all our allies," she ordered. "Phase 6 is complete. Prepare for Phase 7, the reconstruction of the Empire. Above her, on the main screen, a timer counted down the minutes until the Imperial ships would regain power. But everyone knew that something far more important was counting down: the final hours of the old Empire itself. 1 month after Earth's demonstration of power, the Great Hall of the former Imperial Palace looked very different. The golden throne was gone, replaced by a simple round table. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat together. Former slaves beside former masters, Imperial officials next to resistance leaders. Admiral James Carter stood at the speaker's podium, his blue Earth defense uniform standing out among the varied clothes of the galaxy's species. Behind him, the Imperial symbol had been replaced by a new one, a spiral galaxy with the words "Alliance of Free Worlds" written beneath it. The last Imperial holdout surrendered this morning, he announced. The transition is complete. In the audience, Director Thompson sat beside the former High Lord Julia, who now served as the representative of the former Imperial core worlds. Both women nodded in satisfaction. They had worked together over the past month to ensure a peaceful transition. Earth's defense systems will remain active throughout the galaxy, Carter continued, not to control, but to protect. Any world that wishes to leave the Alliance may do so freely. Any world that wishes to join may apply. The age of conquest is over. On screens across the galaxy, billions watched as the new Alliance Charter was signed. The document was simple but powerful. Every world had the right to govern itself. Every species had equal rights, and Earth's technology would protect all members from aggression. In orbit above the capital, Captain Lisa Wells watched from the bridge of her ship as former Imperial vessels were refitted with new engines, ones that couldn't be used for war. Her quantum pendant now displayed the Alliance symbol. Message from Earth Command. Her communications officer reported. Project Liberation is officially complete. Lisa smiled, remembering the long years of undercover work, the network of allies they'd built, the careful planning that had led to this moment. Send word to all our agents, she ordered. They can come home now. Back in the Great Hall, Dr. Robert Mason demonstrated the new quantum communication network that would connect Alliance worlds. Unlike the Imperial version, this one was transparent. No secrets, no hidden surveillance, just open communication between free peoples. The technology that helped us defeat the Empire, he explained, will now help us build something better. Knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. Ambassador Thomas Reed, who had delivered Earth's final warning to the Imperial Council, now served as Earth's representative to the Alliance. He stood to address the assembly. Some have asked why Earth didn't simply take control after defeating the Empire, he said. The answer is simple. We banned the Empire not because we wanted its power, but because we wanted to end that kind of power altogether. In the streets outside, people from 100 different species celebrated together. Imperial propaganda centers had been converted into historical museums, showing both the truth of the past and hope for the future. Former Imperial soldiers helped former slaves learn to use Earth's technology, while Earth engineers taught everyone how to maintain the defensive systems that protected their worlds. Director Thompson's voice came over the Alliance communication network, reaching every world simultaneously. Let history record that the Empire didn't fall through violence or revenge. It fell because Earth showed the galaxy a better way. We didn't just ban the Empire from our space. We banned the very idea of empire from our future. As the celebration continued, Admiral Carter walked through the Great Hall, remembering that first confrontation with the Imperial fleet at the edge of Sol system. It seemed like a lifetime ago. Admiral, a young officer called out, "They're ready for the ceremonial activation." Carter nodded and stepped onto the balcony. Below, the crowds fell silent. He raised his hand and pressed a button on his uniform. Across the galaxy, Earth's quantum defense platforms pulsed with blue light, but now they displayed a new message to any ships that approached Alliance space. Welcome to free space. All peaceful beings welcome. Earth Defense Force standing guard. The empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was gone, replaced not by a new empire, but by something unprecedented. A true alliance of equals, protected by Earth's technology and guided by humanity's hard-learned lessons about power and responsibility. And in the darkness between the stars, Earth's ships continued their endless patrol, ready to protect the peace they had worked so hard to create, not through fear or force, but through wisdom, mercy, and the unshakable belief that freedom was worth protecting.